I think listeners will enjoy tuning in to Wine to Five, basically because Steph and Val make wine fun again.
It's not 5 o'clock, and they don't care. Welcome to Wine to Five. Entertainment, education, and everyday drinking for everyday people. Your hosts are Valerie Caruso and Stephanie Davis, two wine educators who don't need a clock to know when to pour that next glass.
Val, I was dreaming about you when I woke up this morning.
And I'm sorry. Do you do that often?
Well, I can't say that I do, but it was kind of exciting, though. I mean, and obviously it was very memorable. But so I have to tell you, you were going to be on the Today Show. And I was like, what? And I'm like with you in person, and you really looked amazing. I mean, like you were camera ready.
As opposed to the schlump that I normally look like? Is that what you...
In your yoga pants? You were not in yoga pants. Like you were like full on Val superstar time, but your hair was a little bit, you had like it kind of like highlighted. It was like sun-kissed hair, and yeah, so I was so excited, and I like woke up and I was like, what was she talking and talk about on the Today Show? But I just assumed it was about wine. But yeah, I didn't finish the dream, so I didn't get to know what you were going to talk about.
Wine.
Yeah, right? I mean, do you think you would be talking about something else?
You know, it has to be about wine because it's the only thing I know anything about, apparently. And, I mean, Kathy Lee and Hoda, I mean, they drink. So I would assume it would be the fourth hour of the Today Show. So it would make sense.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to your dreams coming true. I mean, they drink on the show, so there's no telling. So speaking of show and tell, see what I did there? Let's show and tell. Let's talk about what we're drinking, and then we'll do what we do, girl.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, so what I'm drinking is I've got some Chardonnay, but I have to tell you that I did make the Calimocho that we talked about in a previous episode because I wanted to not only taste it, but I also wanted to make it for those We Like Drinking podcast brothers of ours.
I know, they talked about it, listeners. They talked about it the same week we did.
I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
I almost wanted, I mean, it kind of felt like, did we plant the seed in their listeners' mind that's why? I don't know. I really don't know. But it was kind of funny. And so I made it. I made the Calimocho with Coca-Cola and some red wine. And then my classy friends came over and brought some beautiful Cakebread Cellars wines, a selection of Cakebread, which was really fabulous. And so I'm sipping on a leftover bottle from last night. It is the Cutting Wharf Vineyard Carneros Napa Valley Chardonnay. This one's from 2011. And man, it was so good. And I made this scallop. It was like this like lean and healthy recipe I had of this tarragon saffron broth, scallops, red potatoes. Yeah, it was just like this really yummy brothy sauce with white wine in it. And then I made this shaved Brussels sprout salad that I love so much from the Wall Street Journal.
Oh yeah.
And it was so perfect with the Chardonnay. So anyway, that was a huge hit. Definitely will make it again. But what I thought was really kind of cool is that I found on the Cakebread website, and I have all the links for this, they have a fun photo contest.
Okay.
And I have not submitted my photo yet, but I'm tempted. But
I know
I should. There's a photo contest, and it ends October 31st of this year, 2017. And all of the details are going to be in our show notes. So check it out. The winner gets an engraved perpetual photo contest trophy that's on display at the Cakebread Cellars Winery. And you also get your own personalized engraved trophy as well. But I was like, that is so cool. And they show you the previous winners so you can get some ideas of like what to do and sort of what not to do. But yeah, Cakebread.
We'll totally do it, and then when you do, let us all know, and we'll put it in the blog so everybody can see it.
Yeah, okay, deal. What are you drinking?
I'm on my second glass of a Taylor Fladgate 2011. This is a late bottle vintage port, and it is absolutely delicious. There's not much left, but that's okay. This is a ruby port, and it's one of those wood age styles. And I kind of bringing this up because there's a lot of confusion about port.
Yeah.
You know, how long you can keep it open, whether you should decant or not. So a late bottled vintage port is only bottled upon release, which means it's not bottle aged. So like most, and this is, like I said, it's a ruby style. So like most ruby ports, like regular vintage, single quinta vintage crusted or ruby reserve styles, they spend a lot of time in wood, but then they're bottled matured. So those will throw sediment. This one will not. So bottled mature ports, have another sip, Val. Bottled mature ports need to be decanted. Wood-aged ports like tawnies, the white ports, the white reserve ports, or the non-vintage ruby ports, or like this one I have in my glass right now, they do not need decanting. And when I was studying this for the diploma, I actually made this little diagram. I actually flow charted out the flippin' ports because I couldn't keep them all straight in my head. So I color coded which ones were red, the ruby, the gold is tawny, and what have you. Again, so if it's a bottle-aged port, bottle-matured port, it's going to throw sediment. You need to decant. If it's wood-aged, like the tawnies, or an LBV, like this one's called, late bottle vintage, or a regular ruby, non-vintage, they do not need decanting. And once this thing is open, you have about 3 weeks to drink up. Okay? And the ones that you open, like the bottle-matured ones, once you open those bad boys, just drink the whole bottle that night. You're done. You cannot keep those. I mean, have some friends over. Be responsible. I'm not suggested, you take a nice single quinta vintage and bottoms up. But those, you decant them and you share them with friends, but you've got to drink them. They do not last. But these wood-aged ones, you can keep them open for a couple weeks.
Right.
Cool, right?
And those, it's cool and it is confusing. And the other thing is something for you to notice when you're like at a bar, right? Because you'll see some of the bottles behind the bar or on a wine list and stuff. So, keep that in mind too, because those are the ones that have a shelf life.
Yeah. And what's good is some of them will say, like this one, oh, by the way, it says when they bottled it too. So this was bottled in 2015. So it has to spend at least 4 to 6 years in wood normally. On the back, it tells you how long you can keep.
Oh, that's good.
I wish more producers would do that.
I wish they would too. The sherry producers should do that as well.
Absolutely. I think people would buy more sherry and more port because it's something people don't understand.
You know who else should do that? The vermouth producers.
Vermouth producers, yeah. Aromatized wines, sherries, ports, fortified wines. All these producers, I think if there were more user-friendly instructions on bottles, I think people would buy them more. But now you just look at them in the store going, I don't know what the hell to do with that. And you just keep walking. Yeah.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Totally. Yeah, and the bars don't always do it right either. So, that's...
No.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing. Well, so what we're going to talk about in this episode is what's not so glamorous about the wine biz. And also, like, why social media posts, they look glamorous, right, when they're doing everything so wine and fancy and stuff, but they really don't tell the whole story. So Val and I decided, we've had some great guests on the show and we've got some good material, so we're going to put together a show that's kind of like man behind the curtain discussion about the truth, like maybe not Mythbusters, but it's kind of like wine industry pros and cons. This one is about the cons, right? And so taking the good with the bad, but trying to be very real about this. So, and just recently, we had our guest Joe Fattorini, that was in episode 113, and rightfully some of this stuff should be talked about. And what he was talking about, and I want to point out, was his taxing travel schedule, right? So travel can be a really difficult aspect of being in the wine industry and being a wine professional. And Joe talked about how little he was at home. And even with his celebrity status, we called out his awards and all of this stuff that he's doing, and as a TV show host and everything else, he's got long days, long layovers, and long flights. And can you honestly say, is there enough wine? Does he, to make up for that? I don't know. Is there? Val?
I would have to say if it's good quality, and I know you and I have I'm going to just stray because it's what I do. You and I have talked about this before. If a company is going to demand for me to do that kind of travel, first of all, I'm not flying coach. I'm going to be a diva about it because it's disgusting.
Yeah.
And the wine list is better. And I don't even need first class, just business, just so I can sleep, But I am not going to do that kind of traveling for any company unless I can travel like a person and not like cattle, which is how I feel these days on international. I don't want a job where I have to travel if I have to fly like that. It's no fun anymore.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I think any job that requires a lot of travel doesn't have to be in the wine industry.
True.
You have to really think about that. How does that impact your relationships, your social life, your sleep, any other
health?
Yeah, your health and your priorities that you have outside of work. So that is something to really consider. And you're right. I mean, you have to stand up for yourself and say, hey, I fly business only, or, maybe it's the company's private jet or something, but whatever, because it matters. Time is money.
It really does. It's time. Time is money. It's your health. And I know that's something, even when I was on active duty, we didn't get to fly, rock star all the time or at all, unless you had your own miles. And it was just unhealthy.
Yeah.
It's something that we also talked about with Sharon McCarthy. Remember her from episode 43, Sharon McCarthy from Banfi?
Yeah.
She has got this. I mean, we all talk about, are they hiring? Boy, I'd love to be Sharon. I know somebody that wants to work for Banfi when they grow up. Vice president of wine education for Banfi. How many of us want to have that title?
Oh, I know.
Vice president
Envy
of wine
all over that.
education
Yeah.
and all that. But like she told us on the show, the time that she spends on the road conducting tastings and giving presentations, it takes its toll.
Yeah.
And she even confessed to us on the show that as much as she loves her job, she'd love to have more free time. And I think that's what, like you said, with anybody that travels. And even with Brienne. Remember last summer?
Yeah.
We were up in the FOCO, in case you're new to the show, or if you don't remember that episode, in episode 61, we had Constellations Academy of Wine's Brienne Gist on the show. And she was very honest about the challenges of being in the wine business. And the one that rose to the surface while we were chatting with her, and that, where were we?
Cafe Vino
over coffee, over cappuccini.
Yeah.
And the one thing that rose to the surface was managing calorie intake and maintaining a healthy weight, right?
Yeah, because that's, I mean, what are you going to do when, most nights of the week you're entertaining, either somebody in your staff or a client, or, you've got a work engagement, and it's always eating and drinking.
Yeah, when I was with the military, we used to have to go to these functions a lot of times. If our troops are graduating from a school, or we had wing functions or boss functions or whatever, we called it eating for our country.
I haven't heard you talk about that before.
Yes, mandatory fun, or, I've got a luncheon to go to. Yeah, I got to eat for my country today. And it's usually not good, healthy food, which was different because working out a hell of a lot more. Plus, I was a fitness instructor, so I was getting double workouts when I was military. But when you're in the wine industry and you're going to all these wine dinners, like, I cringe when I see them now. It's like, I don't want to go to a wine dinner. They're not eating anything healthy there. The wine has got to be stellar for me to want to go. But, you're talking steak.
Yeah.
Even when I worked for that Napa winery, every time you did a tasting, it's cheese.
Yeah.
You're eating things that, while we love them, you're eating them more than you should. And so you've got to find time to work out when you're on the road. She said, 3 weeks out of a month?
Yeah, she travels 3 weeks out of the month. And I mean, that's intense. And, when you're eating on the road, then you make even, fewer good choices. I mean, and when you think about it, a lot of these wine dinners, and gatherings and tastings, fresh vegetables don't necessarily always pair very well with wine. Some wines, sure, but when they really want to highlight the beauty of a wine, a lot of times, you are having
decadent
red meats,
yeah,
or something that's decadent and fattening and saucy, lots of sauces. And so yeah, that is tough. And we've talked about it many times, Val, about how important we both fit in our workouts and try to eat right on our days off kind of things.
Well, absolutely. And even when we go to like wine camp, I think maybe the first day or two we'll see each other in the gym at the hotel, but that goes to hell about the second day. Normally, it's like nobody's in the gym the second day, and you always start out. It never fails. It's like, oh yeah, the first day you're in the gym and you might see everybody. The second day you're in there, you're not hitting it as hard, or you just give it up the rest of. I usually count on one day at the gym if I'm at wine camp, unless I'm there for an extra day, because it's just like you start early and you're going late and you're tasting 50 wines a day, and you're not. You've got to be really disciplined to get it in there. So it's interesting to see how it is becoming a concern. And I think Kathy Hoyha brought this up.
Yeah, she did. About
keeping fit while you're representing, and again, not just the wine industry, but any job that requires a kind of travel.
Yeah, precisely. But another aspect of being in the wine industry, because you are eating and drinking this much, right? I mean, even if you've been in the industry a long time, you're super uber responsible, and you're drinking a lot. So unfortunately, there comes the hangovers and, a lot of regret the next morning, which would be like when at wine camp you don't go to the gym in the morning, because you're staying out late, you're drinking too much. And, luckily, if you're at a hotel or something, that's cool. But now, let's say you're drinking too much and like, what did you call it for the military? It was eating for your country.
For my country?
Yeah.
You're eating for your business. You're eating for your work.
Yeah, you're eating and drinking for work. I mean, you're drinking for the business, right? So you're out drinking, and then in all seriousness, right, then you've got to deal with drinking and driving. So now you've got to figure out, okay, how's the safe way to get home? Or are you not drinking? Or are you just spitting? What's the setup so that you can be safe? So some of that is not glamorous.
It is really not. And I know when I schedule I'm going to use wine camp as an example because that's 3 days. And when I'm scheduling my seminars, I look at the 8 o'clock hour and I think, do I really want to be tasting fortified wines or Cabernets at 8 o'clock in the morning? No. Oh, I see sparkling. I'll do champagne or I'll do rosé, or if there's a choice to try something lighter during the day in the morning hours. But I have to say, this will be my fifth wine camp. Is it fifth wine camp? Fourth,
I think.
Fourth wine camp. I've never been hungover.
Nice, yeah.
I try, when everybody was staying out, like I remember New Orleans, it was like 10 o'clock and we're by the hotel. I'm like, okay, I'm going to bed. I take my sleep very seriously because you have to sit in seminars and especially now I'm on the board. I can't be soused.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm the same way. I haven't been hungover at the Society of Wine Educators conference, and I haven't at Women of the Vine either. I mean, I think part of it too, though, Val, is that you and I spend our own money to be there, and when we do that, or we have done that in the past, the thing is that when you're sponsored to be there, or your boss or somebody sends you there, sometimes you have a different perspective, right? Like, do you really want to be there? Are you going to try and milk the seminar to get as much as you can out of it and make sure that everything is worth the dollar that you're spending? And so for me, a lot of that is I spent a lot of money to be here, and I want to learn and absorb as much as I can. So I don't want to feel bad or be hungover or just flat out miss because I can't drag my ass out of bed or something.
I think that's the sad part, is that people actually do miss the experience. And I think for the first couple years I was in student mode, so I was trying to get every bit of education out of it that I could. And then last year I was like, okay, diploma's done. I'm not studying for anything in particular. Now I'm just here to enjoy. But I was still pacing myself.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't stay out late. There were so many people to socialize with. It's like you got to kind of stay sharp or you're going to miss, because you get 3 days with these people and you're lucky to have 5 minutes with either a listener or a friend or somebody in the business that you want to talk to that you've never met before or whatever. And if you're just too tired or too incoherent,
yeah,
what's the point? Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Yeah. Well, and then this isn't really talked about as much either, but I mean, not just these conferences, but the credentials, taking these exams to earn these credentials are very costly. And
yes,
that is something that is not talked about very often. It's certainly not posted on any kind of social media, but most of us are trying to earn this, like the skin off our back, with trying to pay for these things that help us, but at the same time, it can really cut into your expenses. And there are some scholarships and there's some employers that give financial assistance, which is so cool, but not very many people get that help. And so, part of being a wine professional oftentimes includes earning these credentials, and that's a huge chunk of money. And Val and I have both, kind of shed a few tears and cried over how much we've spent on a lot of this stuff. So that's definitely not glamorous. And also, once you get the credentials, some of the industry jobs don't pay very well.
No, we're definitely not. And Brianne said this too.
Yep.
We're not in this for the money. We're in this because it's something we absolutely love. And I think we agreed that to get just the diploma that I got, that was about $10,000.
Right.
That wasn't chump change, especially because I'm in a location where there was nobody else studying. So I'm forking out for the bottles by myself. Plus, if you're in a location where you can't just waltz into downtown DC and take an exam, you're getting on a plane.
Yeah.
You're traveling to take, if you take the Court of Masters, you're traveling to take those exams. You don't get to just, especially if you're going for the higher levels, I should say. So yeah, it costs. And I think at one time I estimated all the wine education I did since I retired has been over $100,000. If we count the time I lived in Italy, what I've spent for my apartments in France, the school, the flights, everything that I've put into my wine education, it's been well over $100,000.
But you wouldn't do it. I mean, you wouldn't do it if you didn't absolutely love it. But, that doesn't mean we're not trying to discourage people. We're just trying to be very honest with everybody, because we know that if you're listening, you love wine. Maybe you're thinking about getting into it. Maybe you just love it and that's fun, or it's a hobby, or you just love Val and Steph, But
yeah.
But no matter what, we just think that it's good to be transparent and talk about both sides of it, because, we post all the fun stuff too. I mean, I make a habit of posting primarily just fun stuff. And it's like, well, there is a flip side to it too. I mean, it does cost. You do have late nights. It does infringe on some of your personal time. There's all those kind of things about, oh my God, how many calories did I eat 3 nights in a row?
Yeah.
Or drink. Sometimes it's just what you've been drinking. That's the calories. So those are the things that we want to bring to the surface and tell everybody about.
So what we're saying is the fleas come with the dog, right, Steph?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's got its pros and cons. You gotta love it. Like Steph says, it's not all roses. So if you're as passionate about wine as we are, you don't have to get a job in the wine world, but you can always keep it as close to your heart as a hobby. We encourage you to share your wine industry or your wine hobby stories on our Facebook page. We would love it if you'd leave us a speak pipe. If you've got an experience that you can share with our listeners, definitely leave a speak pipe voice message. You only got 90 seconds, but if you can whittle it down or send it in, then we'd love to hear it, because your stories make it real. They connect all of us, and we'd love for you guys to continue the conversation.
Yeah, so definitely let us know, guys. Say, chime in and be going, you guys are so right. You know what my biggest challenge is? Blank. That's for you to fill in and say, what you didn't mention on the show with something else that I think is really important and everybody should know, blank. Yeah.
Right. So what else should everybody know, Steph?
Well, I don't even really know how this whole thing came up, but I thought it would be fun to say, okay, besides vampires, do you know that what else Transylvania has? Wine. And it's not like some kind of weird vampire wine or anything like that. No.
No.
Right. I know, because Transylvania is in Romania, and it's this cool little, like, it's in the center. It's almost like its own little island in Romania. And so it's this elevated plateau at about 1,800 feet, and it's partially encircled by these Carpathian Mountains. They kind of swirl around and cover a large part of Romania. Mm-hmm. And Romania has been cultivating wine for something crazy town like 6,000 years. Some of those countries over there, really, that's the birthplace of wine. And so specifically in this little island of Transylvania, it is kind of a cool, wet climate, and the white varieties do very well there. So we're thinking of Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Gris, the Muscat, Autumnal, a little bit of Chardonnay, and then they have some of these indigenous grapes. Okay, Val's going to help me with this, but I think it's pronounced Fetiasca.
Very good.
Fetiasca alba and the Fetiasca regala. So some cool grapes there, and then some that you're more familiar with. And then I think this is probably why I also wanted to bring it up, is that currently there's a lot more investors going in and beefing up that Transylvania wine industry. So the growth is happening. I don't know when you're going to see any Romanian or Transylvanian wine, in your area particularly, but it is growing, which is very cool. I mean, haven't had a Transylvania wine. Have you, Val?
I have not. No, I haven't. But the Fetiascas, those are the most grown grapes in Transylvania, Moldova, and the Banat regions also. So, and they make these sweet wines out of them as well. Yeah. So there's supposed to be some really cool, like the Cotonari that comes out of there.
Yeah, I saw something about that.
Yeah, so I would love to get my hands on those. We did a webinar on the gems of Eastern Europe, and this was actually the one I did. I did Romania. We did Croatia, so I did the Croatian wines, and I did a Bulgarian. That was a super webinar with the Society of Wine Educators, and I think it's fascinating, these little known regions, and like Matt and Shireen talk about.
Yeah, from Exotic Wine Travel, they've got their Croatia wine travel book coming out.
Yes, and we'll be giving you guys more about that too.
Yeah, so well, what's on your radar then, Val?
Well, what's on my radar is one of the very first female wine producers in Barolo is Chiara Boskie, and she's coming to Colorado. She will be in Vail on the 11th of July as part of the Vail Symposium. Chiara, whose hands you see on the cover of the book that Suzanne wrote, that we talked about back in episode 69.
Yep.
She's in chapter 2, by the way, but she's going to share her stories beyond the book in a session called Beyond the Bottle with the author of Labor of Love, The Wine Family Women of Piemonte, Suzanne Hoffman. Tickets are ridiculously priced at $25.
Ooh.
Students are only $10. And this includes a reception about 30 minutes before the session starts. It starts at 6:30. So we'll go ahead and link that up, or you can go to vailsymposium.org and check it out there. But we'll link up if you're going to be in Vail vacationing or whatever and want to go hear the seminar. Her family's been making wine for over 800 years, and I think it's just fascinating, her stories, and and some of the stories Suzanne told us about her in episode 69 about her leaning out the car window and yelling at the old lady. Remember? That was so funny.
Yeah, very descriptive. It was really cute.
We were talking about the not so glamorous side of wine. If you go back to World War I and World War II and read some of the books that we've talked about on the show, including, Suzanne's book now, there's a story of when the Germans occupied Piemonte, how her ancestors had to actually trade an entire vintage of Barolo for prisoners.
Wow.
And so some of the stories that even transpired throughout history, it's agriculture.
Yeah.
It's not always been the most glamorous world as much as we tend to glamorize it, but it's still so beautiful and so culture rich, even like Joe talked about in last week's episode. So guys, I mean, it's just the stories behind the wine are fascinating, which brings us right back to why we love it. But what about your wino radar, Steph?
Well, I was flipping through the Somm Journal and I saw something new and thought, wow, where, do I live in a hole or something? But I did go to school. I went to pharmacy school at the University of Montana in Missoula. And lo and behold, in the Somm Journal, there's this Montana wine festival that's called Big Sky Vine and Dine, and it's in Bozeman, and it's coming up in August, and this is in its first year. Like, they got it together a few years ago, so it's August 16th and 17th, and I'm like, anything that's Montana related. I mean, I met somebody the other day who's from Montana, and you just kind of cling on to that commonality. And so anyhow, I was impressed because, yeah, there was like no wine anything to be heard of when I lived in Montana. But so they have this fancy wine festival, and this is probably what really caught my attention. They even have a seminar on orange wines. So
wow,
I would just like buzz up there if all things being equal, I would just go up there and go to that, because in August, I mean, Montana is so gorgeous. And yeah. I can't imagine how beautiful that would be. And it's probably not overly crowded, or even though they might have some fancy wines and some fantastic seminars, the people there are really down to earth. So I'm sure it's going to be fabulous.
Yeah, I'll bet it is. And Montana is so beautiful. We went through there last year on our road trip, and I just absolutely loved it.
Definitely.
It was probably one of my favorite stops. But what about shout-outs? Let's see. We have a new review on iTunes. And actually, it's been there, and I thought I'd put it in the blog, but who knows if I did or not. But we're going to give the cooking studio of Fort Collins a shout-out. They left us a 5-star review on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. And here's what they said. Sometimes learning about wines feels overwhelming. There are so many varieties and nuances. Steph and Val are not only experts, but the kind of experts that help the rest of us learn about and enjoy all wines, and they make it fun. This is a great show. Thanks for doing it, Steph and Val. Well, you're welcome, Cooking Studio of Fort Collins. We appreciate the review, and we are going to keep doing what we do, and we're so glad that it resonates with some of you.
Yes, and please definitely leave us some reviews. We'd love to share them with everybody on the show. So thank you, everybody, for your support, and especially our Patreons. We love you guys. Thank you so much to our tenacious tasters, Jeff E. from the We Like Drinking podcast, Lynn from Savor the Harvest, who wins every month's thing.
I know, right? I swear, it's not rigged. They're probably like, oh, they're just friends. No, we've never met. But
we've never met
all
Lynn.
The pieces of paper, the same size, in the bag. I don't know. She's just one of those lucky ladies. Well, she gets to live in Bordeaux. I mean, come on. So
I know. She just really has something going there. And our other tenacious taster, Sebastian from Sassy Italy Tours. So please check out that. And it's not 5 o'clock. Clearly, I mean, if I had too much Chardonnay, I think. But it's not 5 o'clock, and we don't care, listeners. Those listeners are at the $5 level. Thank you, Meg, Clay, John, Andrew, and Aswani. And if you're wondering, how do I get on this Patreon bandwagon? And what do I get besides the shout out on the show? Well, you can become a Patreon supporter by going to patreon.com/wine25podcast. Super easy. Links are in our show notes. But you should do it because you get early releases of all of our episodes. You get exclusive content. For example, there's a bonus episode from Joe Fattorini's interview that Val created. And as Patreons, you get swag and these fun shout-outs. So even at the $2 a month listener level, you will get entered into a drawing for a surprise wine gift, which Lynn seems to be very successful at. But so anyhow, you guys, it's super easy. We really appreciate it. It supports our show, and we do need your help. So thank you to everybody who is on the Patreon bandwagon.
Yes, and thank you to everybody who shares the Wine to Five podcast. For everybody who subscribes to our show, we thank you for sharing it, for linking it, for tweeting it, for Facebooking it, for getting the word out and helping our community grow. Guys, grab somebody's phone, help them subscribe, push play for them. Leave us a burning wine question or a comment on SpeakPipe. Those are all ways you can get involved. Or write a review on Apple Podcasts or iHeartRadio. Also, head to our website because we've got a store there. There are wine books, there's accessories, there's a search box. So it doesn't cost you anything if you're going to order stuff online anyway. Just check out the store. Every week, we do put links in our blog also about things we talked about in the show to make it easy for you. Click, click, done. You're good to go. You can just get the stuff right there from the blog. It's all on our website. Links to Facebook, links to Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube, Google+. We're all over the social spaces. I'm Val, and you can connect with me on Twitter. I'm at WineGalUnboxed, and I'm on the Vino with Val Facebook page. I'm also as Vino with Val on Instagram and also on Pinterest. Steph is on Twitter and Instagram and Pinterest as the Wine Heroine, and you can connect with her personally on Facebook. I think that's all we have for you guys this week, right, Steph?
It sure is. Thanks, Val.
All right. Thanks, Steph. Until next week.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to the Wine to Five podcast. Be sure to check us out at Facebook/WineTWO5 and tune in next week for more fun and useful sip tips.